Hello, this is Deborah Clay, fiction author and podcaster, and this is Castaway Books. I've been asking authors to tell me about the books that have influenced their life and inspired their writing. Now it's time to shine the light on book bloggers, those amazing writers who tirelessly support and cheer on authors with their book reviews. This week's guest is Jill Doyle. I'm really delighted to meet Jill Doyle here on my beautiful desert island, because I've been following Jill's 5 on Friday in particular, which is a brilliant blog. You can tell us more about it when I finished introducing you, but I love your 5 on Friday. And you've been having for some time your Kindle offers on Facebook and on your blog, and your book cafe, because as an ex-librarian, you're full of good advice to steer us towards the best books to read, and we love you for it. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for asking me.
So tell us, before we start, tell us a little bit about 5 on Friday and about your life as a book blogger, just a little, and then we're going to your first book.
Okay, well, I started blogging in November 2015, and I never set out to be a book blogger because I didn't even know what a book blog was at the time. I'd actually just been writing reviews, posting them on Amazon and Goodreads, and I'd discovered NetGalley, and I realised that they seemed to be looking for perhaps a more formal way of recording reviews. So I thought, if I had a blog, or if I think of it as a website, if I had that, then it made me look more official, if you like. And so I started to put my reviews on the blog. I never expected that people would actually read them as such. I never expected that I would have people become followers. And I certainly didn't expect to be sitting here 5 years later talking about it. So that was how the blog got started. It wasn't intentional, it just sort of happened.
I love the way incidental things in our life lead us down paths that we didn't imagine ourselves going down, and are just so right for us, as this obviously has been for you.
It is. I think after I didn't realise how much I missed the library until I perhaps started the blog, because I realised that what I liked was not necessarily the reviewing, but actually just recommending books and talking to other people about books. And I missed that day-to-day interaction. So the blog made up for that, really.
My favourite subject. So we shall go straight into your books, your take on the island. So what is your book number 1?
Well, book number 1 is it's The Christmas Tree Fairy by Molly Clark. And I say that with fingers crossed, because I haven't actually seen that book since I actually read it. I say I read it, I suspect somebody read it to me, and I maybe picked up certain words, because I think I was about 5 or 6. And I remember sort of the story, or really the moral of the story, which is nobody is really better than anybody else, because it's about a Christmas tree fairy who, because she's a fairy, seems to think that she is better than everybody else. And she goes through the book being not very nice to other people or other animals, one of which I particularly remember was the robin. And then she has a problem at the end and realizes that she does need other people, and that really it's do as you would be done by is probably the moral of the story. But it's a book I've been searching for every time I go into a secondhand bookshop. And I'm just assuming that this is the book, because I've tracked down various books called The Christmas Tree Fairy, but this seems to be the right period. It was a sort of easy learning to read book. And so I suspect this is it, but I'm sort of, half of me wants to find it, and the other half feels I'm going to be mightily disappointed if I discover that this isn't the one I've been yearning for years. But I also realized, when you ask me these questions, that when it comes to books, it's less I realized sitting down, when I have to think about a book that had an effect on my life, I realize it's less the book that has the effect than the memories that it brings up with them. And I think of a time, and I think of a book, and then I think of the time that it reminds me of. And this, as I say, this was bought to keep me quiet on a train ride up to Edinburgh, and it obviously did. And so I remember lots of little things about that trip, going to the zoo, going shopping in Edinburgh, staying with family who weren't really family. And to this day, I still don't really understand who they were. But all those things are tied up, and they're all really sort of intrinsically linked with this book. So that's my first one.
You shared with me you had another memory from there, which was something of a nightmare. Tell
Oh,
us
it
about
was
this
a
nightmare.
yes, it was a nightmare. And I still, to this day, there is still a bit of me thinks it really happened because it was so vivid. I woke up in the middle of the night, and sat next to my bed was what, I don't know whether it was a goblin, a gnome, an elf, but something of that. It wasn't real. Well, in my head, it was real. But it was just sat staring at me with the most evil grin on its face. And I just screamed and screamed. And my mum came and sort of woke me up, but I still maintained it was there while she was talking to me. So it was just so real and vivid. I've never had anything like it since. Although, having said that, I did have sort of night terrors as an adult, but you can't have those as children. So that doesn't really explain it, but that's the nearest thing I can come to it, because in my head, it was very real.
You know, my husband has become addicted to a channel that talks about aliens and the fact that they've been aliens around from, I don't know, from before Christ. So that could have been an alien coming to look at you.
Well, it stuck in my memory, whatever it was.
Well, we're pleased he left you alone.
Yeah, I've been scared of the dark ever since, though. I'm still not very good in the dark, even now.
It's funny. I remember seeing things as a child, and my brother remembers seeing the same things. And we say, is it because we've shared our memories that we've then started to share them and they've become one? Or did we really see those same things? And was it our minds just developing that we were seeing things on the wall, or was it really there? You know, it's hard because you try and you remember something feeling so real, but your
Yeah,
adult brain says it couldn't have been real.
it is. And I do sometimes think, do I now imprint into my memory things that I've read since to make it, was it really as evil as I believed it was, or did it really look like that? But I described it very vividly at the time, so I know there is a distinct memory there that may have become sort of blurred over time, but I still think it happened.
Great, good story. So book number 2.
Book number 2 is more a sort of series rather than one particular book, and again, it takes me back to a particular time when I was obsessed with the library, which, considering what I turned out to be, was probably sort of heralded future events. I think it was at a time when I was actually going down to the library on my own, which my mother says was impossible because they wouldn't have let me walk that far on my own. But we had a debate about this because I definitely read all those books, and she said she never took me. So one of us is misremembering this. I was obsessed with the library, and I joined the Bookworm Club. And at the time I was reading Millie Molly Mandy and The Family at One End Street, but
My favorite.
I loved that book. I remember doing a drawing of one of the illustrations from it, and I was really proud of it because I cannot draw to save my life, but that was a very good drawing. The favorite was Bobby Brewster, because I suppose I was more of a sort of a tomboy than a girly girl. And I just loved the sort of scrapes that he used to get into. And he everything, there was a sort of magical element to each of the books, because there was always something in the house that probably came to life, and he was always getting into trouble. And the reason I've picked Bobby is because H.E. Todd, the author, came to visit the library one Saturday morning to do an author talk, and he was the very first author that I ever went to listen to. And I had this idea in my head of a story for Bobby Brewster, that I was so keen to tell him, because I had this idea about a magic ruler that could change size, so that Bobby would always be getting into trouble for measuring things incorrectly, because the ruler would have magically sort of reduced or increased. But pretty much as it is now, when I meet an author in real life, I didn't say a word to him, really. I just sort of put my autograph book in front of him, got it signed, and didn't speak to him, which is still sometimes what I can be like.
You obviously had a good imagination then. Have you been tempted to write stories yourself? Or
No, definitely leave it to the people. No, I think that is why I hold authors sort of on a pedestal and with such high regard, because it doesn't matter. Even a bad story is still 100 times better than any story I think I could write, because there is a real skill in storytelling and being able to draw people in. And I don't think I have it.
it's wonderful you support authors. And being a librarian, would you encourage authors to make themselves known to the library and to do talks at libraries?
I would, because I think it's a great way of it harks a bit back to Five on Friday, in that it's a way of introducing readers to new authors, and letting authors sort of give a little bit more away of themselves to readers. Because the premise behind Five on Friday was it is to introduce readers and authors to each other. But I always feel, if you're coming across an author for a first time, or you've never read their books, or you've just heard something about them, if you can find something about that author that you like, or there's something about them that resonates with you, that you're more inclined to remember them, even if you don't read the book at the time. But when you pick up the book, you think, oh, I remember listening to her or him. He was really interesting. I think I'm going to give this a go. And so that was sort of how Five on Friday started, because it was to sort of get a little bit more of the personal things out from an author that you probably don't read when they're doing a standard interview, and just finding something that a reader could remember about them.
And just for people who haven't read it, and I recommend you do go and read it, because you've also got lovely snatches of music, which I always listen to. You asked me about their five favourite music.
Yeah, five pieces of music that form the soundtrack to their lives, and why. And that's the question everybody hits, especially the older you get, because narrowing it down to five is difficult. Five things they can't live without, five pieces of advice for their younger selves, five things that most people don't know about them, which does throw some authors. And then I just sort of say to them, well, look, just remember that the fact is, these are things that people don't know about you. So, if in doubt, make it up. You're an author.
And then I'll be looking for the imposters now.
Yeah, well, I've read some things that people said they've done, and I'm thinking, I think that might be the one they made up. But I can't challenge them, because I've also read some and I think that can't be real, and it is. And lastly, five things they'd still like to do or achieve. I did used to call it a bucket list in the early days, and I don't really know why, because I don't really like the concept of a bucket list, because I always think it means you're leaving things. It has a sense of leaving things too late, and I would rather you do things when you can.
Absolutely. I have to just pick up on The Family from One End Street, because it's taken me ages to find anybody else who even remembers that book. But I adore that. And like you, every time I go in a secondhand bookshop, I say, have you got The Family from One End Street? I could probably buy it secondhand on eBay or something for a ridiculous amount. But I would just love to come across that in a bookshop somewhere.
Well, if I find it, I'll get it for you.
And I'll look for the Christmas fairy for you. We'll both be on a mission. I have got a postcard of it I picked up from somewhere where they had postcards with covers of books.
Yeah.
And when I saw it, I just, oh, it's not in my imagination. This book did exist.
No, it definitely did exist. It was a lovely book.
I think it was on a reading list in schools because somebody who was an older teacher told me that. And I remember it was my teacher who read it. And I really remember when they say you can put your head on the desk while you're being read to, and that lovely, the smell of the wood, of the sun coming across, warming your head and warming the wood on the desk.
Those were the days.
The story was about how all the children got measles or mumps or something is the one I remember. So that was your second book, and that was around 9 and 10 years old when you had your love of libraries, and that led to you being a librarian. So let's go on to book 3.
Book 3 is, for anybody who knows me, my very favourite book of all time. And I did bring my very battered 1970s copies of Forever Amber.
Lovely.
I'd never heard of the book before I read it, but I did A-level history, and I was in an all-girls school, only a comprehensive school, nothing posh. And I think the teachers were getting really desperate to actually get us into to read about the Restoration because, you know, it wasn't happening. So one of them said, "Oh, why don't you try reading Forever Amber? Because it's really good on historical background, and, you know, it might make you appreciate things a bit more." So I at least dashed off to buy Forever Amber, and I was hooked because it's basically every teenage girl's dream, really. It's falling in love, it's unrequited love, because it starts with 16-year-old Amber St. Clair, who comes from a small country village, and she really wants to get away. And she is down, or she's just gone to, she's out walking with a friend, I think, and they meet a group of sort of gentlemen who are looking toward, they're looking for a pub, and she directs them to the nearest one, and decides that she's going to follow them because she quite has her eye on one of them, and the one of them happens to be Lord Bruce Carlton, who she's forever chasing through both volumes. And it's sort of, it charts her rise from a sort of country girl to the mistress of Charles II, and everything that entails in getting there, which probably wasn't what necessarily my mother would have wanted me reading, but there we are. It was just fabulous. And I think, having spent my teenage years sort of mooning over men, boys, whatever, David Cassidy in particular.
Oh, God. So he was mine. You can't have my David.
Oh, I'm sorry. He was mine, definitely mine. It just fed into all that because we'd spent all those years like, oh, be still my beating heart. And here she was, Amber St. Clair and Bruce Carlton. So that was it. But it was very good historically, I will say, or to my mind, it was very good historically. And it sort of fed back into all I was obsessed when I was like 12, 13 with Jean Plaidy, the Sainted Jean. I couldn't get enough, and it just took me back to those days as well. It was just perfection.
And you went on to study social history.
I did. I left school at 18 because I didn't want to go to university because of a boy. Famous last word. And then, of course, when that went the way of quite a lot of things, I went to work and then decided at 22, I think I'm ready for university now. So I didn't go to university until I was 22, and I studied, I did a joint BA honours, which was history with Scottish studies, which meant Scottish literature and Scottish history was what I went to university in Scotland. That would explain that. And then I so I did my degree. I actually met my husband at university as well. So, and then afterwards, when I was working within the library service, I was given responsibility for the local studies section, and looking after sort of family history and local history. So I went to Liverpool and part-time in the evenings and did an MA in local studies. So yes, history and has been a big part of what I've done, really.
Gosh, I'd love to have a little bit of your brain to be help me writing stories, because not
I
just
think
because of the history that you've got. And in fact, I'm writing about a woman who's a librarian in 1967, so I should. That was before your time of being a
yeah, just a
librarian.
bit,
A
but
lot, yeah. You're a similar age to
yeah.
me, I'm
The
sure.
thing is, I think what you would have liked is you might have liked my brain as it was then. As it is now, it is distinctly time ravaged, I think.
But social history is great. And that's why, I mean, I love reading historical fiction. I can't write it. I did attempt it, and I realized how incredibly difficult it is to get everything right, the amount of research you have to do.
Mm.
And I'm in awe of authors who do it well. And there's some who do it extremely well. So, yes, I agree with you on that. Very hard. Okay, so shall we go on to book 4?
Book 4 is actually Ram Ram India by, I have the book somewhere because I can never remember, Alex Thompson and Nick Rossiter. Um, it's it's a book that takes me back very specifically to a time when I seem to have discovered a sense of adventure that I'd never really had before, because I've never been particularly athletic. I hated games at school. I don't particularly like walking or doing lots of things I just never really got involved in. And for some, I still to this day don't understand. Maybe it's one of those things you were just destined to do. I was flicking through a Women and Home magazine, and there was a feature in there about an expedition or a sort of project they were getting together. They wanted a group of women to volunteer to take part in a trek, a 3 volcano challenge around Italy. And I remember thinking, oh God, that would be really good to do. And then I sort of kept thinking about it over the days and thought, oh, why couldn't I do that? And then I sort of filled in the application form and sent it in, thinking nothing will ever happen, so I don't really have to worry too much. And then I found myself doing it. So that was 2004.
Wow, that's huge. Pause there, because that's just huge to be brave enough to put in what if and why not, and then to
on
get
my own as well. I
wow,
didn't know anybody that did it. I can be a bit stupid like that. I sort of do first later.
spontaneous and adventurous.
Yeah, that's maybe the word. I still think at times it's probably stupid. I do things and then I think about them afterwards. I think it was actually 2003. I think I was sort of mid-40s and I was thinking, oh, if I don't do these things now, there's no reason why I can't do these things. The only thing stopping me is me, because I'm lucky that I don't have a family. I don't have children, so I didn't have them to worry about. I have a husband who's very supportive and quite happy to let me do my stupid things. And so I did that. And so that was 2003. And then in 2005, which is where Ram Ram India comes in, I found myself cycling 300 miles through India, because my boss at work, I'd worked with in the library service, was retiring, and she'd previously done a cycle ride in Israel, and she'd sort of said, oh, let's do a challenge. And then this again was me saying, oh yeah, okay, let's do that, thinking nothing is gonna come of this. And suddenly we found out it had, and we'd signed up to cycle from Fatehpur Sikri to Pushkar in India. I at this stage was nearly 50, I don't know, 48 or something. I hadn't been on a bike since I was 12, and I didn't possess a bike, which meant I'd left the library service a year before she had, not retired, but gone on to do something different. and I realized that I was going to have to do something about this cycle ride. So I asked everybody, instead of buying me a present, I said, look, I need a bike. So they all put money in the kitty, and I bought a bike and spent the next year desperately cycling around the lanes of Cheshire to try and get fit to do this cycle ride. So Ram Ram India is particularly pertinent. It doesn't really cover the parts of India that we cycle through, but it does have on the cover a gentleman, if you can see it, who is on the ramparts of Fatehpur Sikri, diving into a pool at the bottom. And we left from the fort of Fatehpur Sikri after we'd been blessed. But before that, we'd gone round the fort, and there, stood on the ramparts, waiting to leap off, was not necessarily the same gentleman, but a gentleman. So this book just reminds me not only of the bike ride, but of my whole descent into challenge madness, because there was another book that came after that, because I then found myself trekking Machu Picchu. So
wow. So what started off as that little thing in a little article in a magazine that whispered in your ear, I can do this, led to all these adventures.
Yeah, the moral of the story is don't fill in things in magazines.
No, the moral of the story is there's little clues for you out there when you keep your mind open and your heart open that will lead you down the path of exciting new things.
No, they were amazing things, and I am so pleased that I did them, because they're just opportunities that you only get one chance to do those things, and it does hark back to that: do things while you can, and if you can, just do it, because they were amazing.
Yeah, don't waste years thinking I should, and then the next one's I could have, because it's gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent inspiration for sport. So on to book 5.
Book 5 is All My Mothers by Joanna Glenn. It is actually about a girl who she's had growing up. She never sort of really felt comfortable as a girl. Her mother was her father was never often there. There was obviously, she knew who her father was, but he was never really there. There was obviously something not right. And her mother wasn't exactly the most necessarily loving of mothers. So it's a book about how she sort of she's searching for a mother, I think, and the people that have actually meant something to her. But it's also really trying to find out exactly what her family background was, because what she'd been told wasn't exactly the truth. And her father is Spanish, so she goes to Spain, and specifically Cordoba. And that's the bit that sort of really did it for me, because I have, as most people who know me know, I have a big thing for Spain. Basically, having been stranded in Seville during the ash cloud, which was heaven, while everybody else was probably cursing. That volcano is my favorite volcano in the world, because we'd gone to Seville on the Monday, we were coming back on the Friday. It was just a short break. I'd gone with my friend, and a midweek on the Wednesday that the volcano erupted, we had been out all day because we'd gone to Granada, somewhere I'd always wanted to go. And we got back to all these missed phone calls from respective husbands saying, "You're not coming home." And we're like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" Because we missed the news and everything. And so we discovered that, we weren't coming home on Friday, and nor were we coming home on Monday, because there were only 2 flights a week from Seville, and everybody else had sort of got their act together. And had there been a flight on the Monday, they'd already booked their seat on it. And because we hadn't, we were at least waiting another week. And so the hotel we were in, they were marvelous. Don't worry, they said, we'll find somewhere for you. You might not be in the same room, but we'll find somewhere for you where you won't be out on the street. But better still, we were stranded there for the Feria, the spring fair, which is when we'd really wanted to go but couldn't afford to, because all the prices shoot up, and we were stranded there. And it was just heaven. And I totally fell in love with Seville. And we did get the chance to go to Cordoba, and Cordoba is the most amazing place as well. So reading this book and reading the way that I know Joanna Glenn has a great love for Spain as well, reading about all of that, and in her epilogue at the end, she sort of writes what is in effect a sort of love letter to Cordoba. And if you replace, I could write that same letter about Cordoba, but in my heart it would be Seville. So if you replace Cordoba with Seville, everything that every sort of emotion that she has in the book about the culture and the place, that is the way I feel. And just reading that, it just reminds me so much of Seville, which is an amazing place for anybody who has never been.
Sounds like a really good book recommendation for somebody who's going to be spending a summer or a holiday there.
Or even if they're not, just read it.
Yeah,
it's a really good book anyway, because I didn't realize until I read it how much it was going to take me back to that place. I'd wanted to read it because of the recommendations. I hadn't actually realized how much it was going to feed into my obsession, it could be said.
Well, I've added it to my to-be read list now. That's the only thing, although your book bloggers are amazing what they do for authors, they also push up our to-be read lists.
Yeah, it doesn't do much for hours either, I have to say. At the minute, I think I've got 5,500 books on Kindle and 750 on the shelves.
Wow.
And I'm still acquiring like there's no tomorrow, because it makes me happy.
You've recreated a library around yourself.
Exactly.
Sounds good to me. So come to my last question. After hearing about your lovely books, what is the luxury that you'll take with you on the island?
I think I've changed my mind slightly since I thought about this, because I did say a mattress because I know I'm the world's worst if I don't sleep properly. But I figured after a few nights bad sleep, I'd be getting so desperate that I would probably sleep on anything. So instead of my mattress, I think I'm going to cheat and take a wind-up radio.
Good idea.
So that I can at least have some music, because I know I would miss music, and voices, albeit necessarily in a foreign language, because I don't know where my desert island is. But I think I would feel, although I'm quite good at being on my own, I think that would just stave off some of the
I'd like it for the Archers, just to have my little community around me, even if they're imaginary.
Well, yeah, I kept thinking, well, where is this island? Would you be able to get the world service? Would I still be able to hear something in English? Yeah, I think I would. So I think I'm going to change it for a wind-up radio, I think.
Well, don't go away, because although we're going to end the program now, I would just enjoy talking to you for a little bit longer. But just say thank you from all authors for what you do for us. We absolutely appreciate it. You're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.